Iyanu, the Chosen Child, just had its season finale, so I want to talk about the show again. Now, for those who didn't see it, I actually made a video about Iyanu earlier on in the season, as from the get-go, it was a very enchanting story. To me, the beginning of these big fantasy adventures are often my favorite part. The humble beginnings where the characters are first discovering themselves and the world feels a bit less heavy than it will later on. Iyanu takes place in the Yoruba land of West Africa, in a fantastical alternate history that focuses on the main character Iyanu trying to uncover her powers and save her people. The show is actually based on a popular comic book series, with the show being adapted by its author. Now, the comic and the show both attempt to do two things. One, bring more modern fantasy to Africa, and bring more African fantasy to a global audience. With that in mind, Iyanu is a story that feels authentically very cultural, having a similar appeal to anime, with even the English dub maintaining their African voice cast to maintain that authenticity. It's apparently pretty successful for Cartoon Network and HBO Max, at least as far as action cartoons aimed at a younger audience goes. So let's talk about the first season, some of its obvious inspirations, and the real-life mythology that inspired it. Now, Iyanu has been accused of ripping off the premise of Avatar, but it's ripped off so much more than that, and I really do mean that in a good way. I honestly hate that people are talking about this show like it isn't unique or original, just because it had some fun nods to Avatar in particular, as well as other media in a similar genre. Iyanu is a chosen one, but chosen ones really go well beyond Avatar, with Aang really being less of a chosen one, and really more just one of a chosen many. The real comparison people seem to draw between the two is that Iyanu gets some kick-ass glowing lights on her, which are obviously very inspired by Avatar and even other media, but the direct similarities really end there. This whole chosen one thing is as common a trope as an orphaned hero, which is something Iyanu also opens with Iyanu only having a protector out in the woods instead of living with her mother or family. This isn't just like Avatar, where Aang is barely even an orphan the way that the air nomad culture worked, but it's also very Harry Potter and Naruto and almost any good children's story. Beyond the Avatar similarity, there's also a really funny similarity to Attack on Titan built into the premise of the show, which has the people of Yoruba land hiding behind multiple circular walls. Instead of giants that eat people like in Attack on Titan, these walls exist in Iyanu to protect the people from the corrupted animals. In the past, humans lived with animals like they do in our world, but due to a divine entity known as the Fallen, these animals have become corrupted and attack humans. It's things like this that make Iyanu feel not like a ripoff of anything in particular, but like a cultural adaptation of an entire genre of larger entertainment aimed at younger people. Not just kids, but younger people in general. These things have become our modern mythology, our shared cultural legends that we all know and often find spiritual meaning in. These fig-leafed references to Avatar and Attack on Titan put Iyanu in this interesting place where it feels like it's letting you know that it's part of that greater world. That this is Africa's welcoming out of a bubble that has surrounded aspects of its culture. It's by using these well-known symbols and visuals that Iyanu is able to show what specifically belongs to its own culture. This goes well beyond the sweet moments, like learning about mashed yam and goat meat, which sounds absolutely delicious, but also includes the idea of Yoruba land once being from a more powerful society, as well as the idea surrounding living in unity with the world around you, particularly the animals. By replacing scary giants with corrupted animals, we don't just get a fun children's version of what Attack on Titan might look like, but an idea of what matters to the writers based on how they grew up in their culture. The powers of Iyanu are rooted in this, with a very particular system for Iyanu's magic. Iyanu is the chosen one, born out of the earth they say, but having a long-lost mother as we learn. Being the chosen one means she has a trinity of powers, or really just a mastery of 3 levels of the same idea. These levels are the unnatural, the natural, and the supernatural. Here, natural refers more so to nature, and unnatural is the mastery over the energy that exists in all inanimate things, even just the rocks and the dirt. One step above this is the natural, here referring to nature and specifically plants, not animals or other humans. Those are reserved for the supernatural, which indicates a level beyond plants due to the type of consciousness that animals have. This is an interesting structure, as the unnatural is just the nothingness of the world that you can easily tap into, followed by the natural being plants that are living but without consciousness, followed by the supernatural, which is animals that have their own identity, making it harder to connect with them. In the show, it's emphasized that tapping into this power is one of the most difficult things that Iyanu will have to do, and it requires extreme empathy. All of this indicates to some degree that the powers are based on Iyanu being able to sort of remove her identity to become one with her surroundings. This is easy with the inanimate, which has no will or identity of its own. To attach to the unnatural, it's more about making yourself blank and letting the unnatural bend around you. Conquering the natural is a bit more difficult as plants are living beings, but they still don't have that devoted idea of their identity the way humans and animals do. This is a power that Iyanu has to master though, as this is the only way to heal certain corrupted animals, particularly her guardian leopard, Echo. All season long, Iyanu was learning to use her powers while making friends with Toye and Beatty, one boy from within the city and another boy from the outside of it, making 4 diverse sidekicks for Iyanu's adventure. The main plot becomes about Iyanu trying to master these 3 powers, not just so she can heal the corrupted animals, but also remove the corruption that has invaded the society within the walls, with their leaders being misled by the Fallen One. To truly master these powers, Iyanu has to return to the source, and this is where the mythology of the show starts to get a bit more deep. You see, the show so far had been using a mostly original mythology, not referencing any exact gods or situations from existing African mythology. But as the show progresses, Iyanu actually seems to focus more so on initiating itself into the greater esoteric mythology shared with the world as a whole. You see, in order to master Iyanu's power, she has to go through 3 trials in a place known as the Sacred, guarded by secret guardians who have inherited the duty to defend this place while waiting for the Chosen. To start, Iyanu enters something like a temple of puzzles, where she is told that she will have to go through 3 trials, one for each of her powers, proving her mastery. Interestingly, this seems to be based on the tradition of the mystery schools found all over the world. We've done several videos deep diving into this concept with different cartoons that I will link at the end of this video, but forgive me if we condense this information a bit for any newbies. Now, mystery schools were a practice all over the ancient world where people would reenact a death and resurrection ceremony based on a story of their own local god. The most well-known ancient version of this was in Egypt, where the initiate would play the god Osiris killed by his brother Set. Osiris is revived for just a moment, impregnating his wife so he can have a physical heir. But this momentary resurrection also gives him divine powers, even as he returns to the afterlife. This allows Osiris to live there as a god, where he's the judge of other souls. This tradition exists all through the ancient world, as I said, and even today, versions of this death and resurrection ceremony exist throughout Africa and even beyond where their practices have traveled. In Nigeria today, there are the death and resurrection ceremonies performed that are meant to connect you to your ancestor spirits, making you a vessel for them to do their will, but also coming back with a sense of power. Traditionally, these initiations would also involve trials, particularly when performed at sacred temples, similar to the entrance to the sacred that Iyanu enters in the show. In modern times, the number 3 is often associated with the death and resurrection today due to the mystery cult of Freemasonry, which itself is believed to have adopted the number from the story of the Bible. In the New Testament, Jesus dies on the cross on the eve of Passover, then rises on the 3rd day. All of this plays out rather interestingly with Iyanu, where mastering these 3 trials allows her to see the spirit of her mother, and Iyanu is even given a chance to join her, but it would mean leaving behind Yoruba land and letting the fallen conquer it. If Iyanu chooses to stay, however, she would be cut off from her mother entirely. This looks like a unique twist on the mystery school legend, but ultimately it just affirms it. You see, part of the reason for this death and resurrection ceremony was that it was based on real-life near-death experiences. When people have this experience, the default mode network of the brain is turned off, which is what makes humans feel separate from everything around them. When they come back from this, people often experience a renewed sense of empathy, even abandoning their identity and their life before in order to go help other people all around the world. The death and resurrection ceremonies thus are meant to make you feel at one with the universe and be a vessel to these angels as discussed. And the only way for Iyanu to do that is to give up on a spiritual life with her mother, letting go of that death and receiving something of another. To be with her mom would have been the non-empathetic choice. It would have been securing her identity with her family. And instead, through these trials, Iyanu is able to prove that she's empathetic enough to know that she has to choose everyone else, letting go of her identity with her mother and being just a spiritual entity that helps the world. This is why she metaphorically becomes the spirit ancestor here, one who doesn't get to pass to the highest of heavens with her mother, and instead stays behind in some way to guard the earth. And so, with that in mind, Iyanu was able to get the gift of her father's bow, some new magic armor, and even defeat the vessel of the Fallen One. However, Season 1 didn't end with just that, and neither did the original comic. The comic and the show are not one-for-one parallels either, but already the show is setting up a plot for a second season by showing that there will be conflict among the people of Yorubaland and the people of the Deep as they are called. So if you haven't seen it, go watch all the episodes now on HBO Max if you can, and get prepared for a second season. And finally, for those curious more about the death and resurrection ceremonies as they appear in other cartoons, here's a playlist with videos for just that. See you guys next time.
Wahahaha! It is I, Dr. Cyborg, and I have come to steal the treasure you care about most!
Not the magic crystal!
No! Racer, help me! Wahahaha! Good luck trying to get your little boyfriend back! No! Not my boyfriend! Boyfriend? Wait, what did I say?